And we are live. What's up, guys? It's Ruben from Dubb, and I'm psyched to get into this convo here because I have Victor on the line with me, and Victor has some tremendous experience. He just got back from Puerto Rico, and he's just doing some really interesting stuff around sales excellence, and that's so much about what we do at Dubb. And I just have this philosophy that it's not about ABC, it's not about always be closing. Now it's about always be consulting. And I know that Victor is a true educator and a teacher and also a motivational speaker. So Victor, let's get into it, man. Tell me about your sort of purpose, your vision. I want to understand about your origin story. Let's get
Okay.
into this.
Well, man, I'm gonna have to correct you. I'll go with my definition. Always be connecting. That's the one I think you should
Oh,
go
there
with.
you go.
Always be connecting, brother.
You guys
Always
heard
be
it here
connecting.
first. Always be connecting.
Always be connected with your customers. So, a quick background, Ruben. And by the way, thank you for having me on the program, man. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much. Background is my family's originally from Puerto Rico, but I grew up in Chicago. If people go online, they'll find me. They'll know my store. Food stamps, government cheese, powdered milk, poor. Then fast forward, got out of the hood, so to speak, decided to get an engineering degree, an MBA, got into corporate America, was an engineer, loved being an engineer. I was an electrical engineer, did a lot of software programming, a lot of hardware testing. But one day I said, you know what? I don't want to do this. Went into applications, started putting together systems, didn't like that either. And then one day I realized that I could take my technical knowledge and my beautiful Spanish language, muy bien, and start selling and make a lot of money selling what I know. And so I love the world of selling, man. It's afforded me the ability to go around the world, Ruben, and just see all kinds of things. So I think I've been on almost every continent, man, and I've seen it. And at the end of the day, man, sales is sales, connecting is connecting, man. You can talk about culture and the differences. I get that. But beyond that, we're always connecting, brother.
Well, so well said, man. So well said. How do you make that connection though? Because so much of sales is about the chase. And that's actually the single biggest pain point that I think really catalyzed what Dubb is today. It's about this idea that if you want to be in sales, maybe this is more of a traditional sense, but it's about grinding, it's about following up. They used to say, the gold is in the follow-up. I don't disagree with that sentence. But it seems like it's changed now, and now it's much more about value and about consultation. And what is your take? What was the synthesis, and where are we now from a sales perspective?
The sales will always be known in basically two domains: pre-internet and post-internet. Pre-internet, the consumer didn't have a lot of information. Salesperson, majority of information. Actual consumer was willing to take time to listen to the salesperson and build that relationship so they can gain more knowledge to be certain of the decision that we're going to make. Fast forward today, we have the internet. The average person searches, according to Google, 10 sources of information online before deciding to reach out to a vendor supplier. And so when you talk to a customer for the first time, they're, depending on who you believe, 60, 70, up to 90% into the buying cycle. I mean, think about that. In other words, they have a lot of content. And so selling has changed in the sense that we have informed consumers. We as salespeople have to be domain experts in what we do. By domain experts, I mean not just know your product, know their market, and also know their client/marketplace, what they're going through. And I think that's important to understand, Ruben, that that's what's really changed in the market. So when we're trying to connect, and we'll just keep using that word, leverage that word on this one, is that what customers want is for you to help them. I always say they want insight, information beyond the obvious. Tell me something I don't know. Here's the irony, though. You would think that consumers having access to all this information would make them not need a salesperson. I strongly believe that for the first time in a long time, the salesperson, the true domain expert, is more valuable than ever. Why? There's so much information out there, Ruben, that people are just confused. There's something called buyer's remorse, buyer's regret, rather. Buyer's remorse is when you regret buying something, like, oh, I should have bought that from Ruben, right? Buyer's regret is when you have so many options in front of you, you make no decision. You'd rather make no decision and live with that than make a decision and be wrong. And so that's what's happening in the market today. People are looking for salespeople to help them clarify, help them navigate the pitfalls in making a decision. That's how I would frame how selling has changed today.
Interesting. So then my natural next question comes to, how can we communicate differently? What is it that we can do now differently? Not, I mean, internet, we've had that forever now, but very recently, I think on LinkedIn specifically, and on different ways that now we're using more kind of authentic storytelling. I think really inspired by maybe young people, or maybe some of the more millennial focus, maybe Snapchat, maybe Instagram stories. There's more kind of cool digital ways that we can share our stories. So what have you noticed on how people can build those connections using?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, look how you got me on this interview, right? What was it? On social media and through your videos, right? I'm like, who is this guy? Who's the dude with the cool hair and the cool glasses? I'm like, okay, I can see, you know what I mean? There's something about seeing somebody visually. There they are, right? There's something about seeing somebody visually that you go, oh, that's the guy I'm talking to. And so I'm going to take this, I'm going to come from a different angle on this one. I'm just going to be, I have a new book coming out in May. It's called Upselling is the New Prospecting. Upselling
Nice.
is the new prospecting.
Say that again.
Upselling is the new prospecting. And my point in the book is I talk about how, too often we focus on trying to get new business, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. Prospecting will always be needed. Whether it's inbound, outbound, prospecting is always needed. But what we don't look at is upselling. Depending on which study you buy into, you can pick up 30% more revenue just by going back to your existing client. Now, let's tie this to what this conversation is about, which is how do you leverage social media? But on top of that, let's layer video to connect with people. Now, if they already bought from you one time, Ruben, why not use video just to stay in touch with them? A simple, quick little video. Hey, how's it going today? By the way, just saw this article. It's attached down there. Thought you might want to read this later. Something quick like that. And I think these constant touch points keep you top of mind with those clients who've already bought from you. So I talk about video in two places. One, you can make it part of your sales cadence as you're prospecting. Send an email, voicemail, email, then maybe a video follow-up, whatever it may be. You can use that as part of the cadence. And I'm sure you've had that discussion many times. I'm also saying that video becomes even more important when it comes to upselling and staying in touch with people who have bought from us. Before we got started, we were talking about customer acquisition costs. We know that your customer acquisition costs are going to be very low if you're going back to people who've already bought from you. And these people who've bought from you, they're, depending on what their lifetime value is, this is some valuable revenue we can tap into. And again, why not leverage the power of social media, more specifically video in this case, to actually do that, just to stay there in their minds.
And I mean, that's exactly what you're doing. I know that you have, you've got this great video called Why Hire Victor Antonio in 60 Seconds. I love that. I love that punchy title. The thumbnail is brilliant. I'm really curious to know where you were speaking in that thumbnail graphic. And then also you have a second video, which is really interesting, which is called How to Become the Greatest Salesperson in the World. I'm hooked. Go.
Okay. So the first one is a 60-second teaser. We all know that people's attention spans are shrinking, right? So let me just give them the highlights. That was at an event I did at the MGM Grand, and I believe the total was 14,000 in that arena.
Wow.
And so it's for a great company called Plexus. Great company. I'll be doing their Nashville event, and I think they're expecting, maximum capacity is going to be like 16,000 for some of these big events. And so, and by the way,
so I gotta stop you right there. So sorry. Yeah. So when you're speaking in front of 14,000 people, do you get nervous?
Yeah. I don't actually. No, I used to. I think when I first couldn't see, but what I did is I just focused on the first few rows, because sometimes you can't even see towards the back. You just know that when you say something, you just wait for that echo. Like say you dropped a punchline, you drop something heavy, some insight, and you wait for impact. And so I'm actually more nervous with smaller groups. You know what I mean? Because you can't be as anonymous with a smaller group, and you're right there. But I think smaller groups are also more fun because they challenge you. You can have dialogue, where these big keynotes, it's only one way. You're transmitting. So that was that event. And so I try to grab a lot of video. So the reason I'm like, yeah, video, because back in 2008, true story, I was reading Gary Vaynerchuk's book, Crushing It. Is it Crush It or Crushing It? One of the two, the first one. And in there, he was like video, 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 video. And I remember around that time, Google bought YouTube. And man, I pushed all in with video. And so, I'm sure you've seen, if you go to on YouTube, I think I have over 1,100 videos on my subscription channel. I think we're up to like 180,000 subscribers. I'm getting there, man. I'm just trying to get big. You know what I mean? But
that's incredible.
But video Ruben, video. People ask me, well, Victor, if I want to be a speaker, how can I get in the market? Video, develop content, video, develop content, anything else. I just keep saying that over and over again. It's a high leverage activity that anybody can do today, given today's technology, given this product, Dubb. I mean, I can create videos all day, right? I mean, this is stuff that I don't think people appreciate that, let's say 10 years ago, because maybe I'm older than some of the people watching this, that this was difficult to do. Some of this technology you've put together makes everything easier. So there's no excuse. The only excuse you have is developing great content. That's it. And so that's how I developed that 60-second. The other one, by the way, the one you're hooked on is the, I think it's Sales Excellence, How to Become a Great Salesperson.
Well, specifically, it's how to be the best salesperson in the world.
Okay, I got a couple of it. There's a couple of it, but I know there's one. It's Sales Excellence with a subtitle, so it may or may not be. It's my most popular video, but I got to tell you about this one. It's got like 1.7 million views, Ruben. And I was just in a ranty mode. You know how you're in a rant mode? You're like, I just want to feel like ranting. And I walked into my studio, turned on the lights, man, just hit the video button. And here's what's killer, man. That video is recorded live. One take, one shot, 1.6 million views. And that's the one that resonated with people. And I got others that I worked harder on, and it didn't resonate. What's the takeaway here? You never know what people are going to want or like,
right?
You know, but I think what they always want is authenticity, which you've already kind of touched on, and sincerity. That's what they want. That's what they want to connect with.
That's so true, man. Yes. I'm looking at this video right now. I encourage people to check this out. Sales Excellence, How to Become a Great Salesperson. That's a very honest title. You know, it seems like, to your point, you know, very little production value in this. You have your intro, your outro, and then you've got your core meat, which was your rant, really. And my question for you is, how much of the rant and the aggression that we have, an outburst, how much do those types of emotions in video help us to get views? And the reason why I ask that is because a lot of the cats right now that are putting out views, they have got a lot of outrage. There's a lot of passion. There's a lot of anger sometimes where you just feel it. It's that burning maniacal rage inside of them. Right. How much of that drives viewability?
Not a lot, actually. That's a rare moment. The thing is, I mean, you know, as you go through the video, for those who watch it, you know, there's no cursing, you know, there's no, you know, I'm mad at the world. It's just this direct, straight talk. You and me talking, for example, it's just direct, straight talk. And the whole video is about taking personal accountability for your training, for your ability to be a great salesperson. Stop waiting for a company to make you great. Make yourself great. And that, to me, it's not so much about aggression. It's not so much about angst. It's about, that was straight from the heart, if I can use that. It was like, man, this is how I really feel. And I've seen, you know, a lot of people online, you know, Ruben, just I think cross the line. And by the way, everybody has their own line, so I'm not going to judge. You know what I mean? If you want to drop some F-bombs, man, it's on you, man. There's consequences with that. It can turn a lot of people off. I think you should always be professional, but there's nothing wrong with coming across, being earnest, being sincere, being passionate, but being respectful to the people who are listening to the video. I don't know if that answers your question, but that's how I see it.
It does, man. It really does. You know, I think at the end of the day, it is about, to your earlier point, it's about building connections, man. And it's not about the widest net that we can put out there in the world. It's about a specific audience that we can build those connections with. And it's also not,
it's also, if I can say it, I don't mean to interrupt, but it's not a shock factor, because a lot of these speakers out there think it's a shock factor. Yeah. You want a shock factor? Here, I'll give you the shock factor. Deliver some real content.
Right.
That people can use. There's your shock factor, because there's not a lot of real content out there. And so I think anybody who can deliver real content, that's the sustainable element right there.
You've shared a stage with some pretty interesting cats. Rudy Giuliani, Zig Ziglar, Paul from Intel, John from Kinko's. What was that like? I mean, what did you learn in that process? You know, being on a stage with some of these titans.
I think the Zig Ziglar one was the most impactful for me.
Oh yeah.
You know, I've done John Maxwell. I was with Damon John, my homeboy Grant Cardone, you know, some of these other cats. I mean, they're just, everybody has their own style, right? So it's always fascinating. But the Zig Ziglar one will always be the one, because if I could tell a quick story,
he's like the OG of this, isn't he?
He's straight up OG, man.
Who came before? Who was the Zig Ziglar to Zig Ziglar?
So the Zig Ziglar before Zig Ziglar, around that time, there's a guy named Jim Rohn. Now,
Okay.
Jim Rohn is the guy who was Tony Robbins' mentor. I don't know if you ever
Ah,
heard Jim Rohn. Jim Rohn, it's Jim Rohn. Oh,
okay.
gold, man. Pure
Really?
gold. The Norman Vincent Peales, these are the guys that came before. But the interesting thing about Zig Ziglar was that when I saw him for the first time in 93, Ruben, I was in Minnesota living there, and I was like, man, look at this guy with that little accent. He knows how to tell a story, right? And so that was the beginning, the seed that was planted that one day, and I joined Toastmasters. I don't know if you're familiar with
Yeah.
Toastmasters. It's a speaking organization. So I did Toastmasters, right? To become better at get better at speaking. And that, by the way,
And that's why you don't use filler words, right?
that's correct. That's why I don't, because I'd had to pay a lot of money for that. And so I always tell people, if you're working within a company, or even if you're on your own, the ability to communicate effectively, concisely, be to the point is so critical that I tell everybody, go through Toastmasters, the best ROI out there when it comes to education, especially on communications. So fast forward, 2006, I believe was the year, I get a call, says, hey, we need a speaker to do this Get Motivated thing in Mississippi. And so I remember I wanted to meet Zig Ziglar, and he was like, well, he's not really seeing anybody, and I was like all bummed out because I had done around that time, it's online for free. I did a documentary called The Motivator,
Nice.
the business of selling hope. And it's a full documentary nominated for several film festivals, won one international film festival award. And I talked about Zig Ziglar in there. So I was like, but look, I did a movie and it includes Zig Ziglar, right? They're like, no. And so finally, I remember I walked away about an hour later. They said, you know what? I got a call. Says Zig said he'll meet with you. And I was like, oh, Zig's going to meet with me, right? And sure enough, man, I met the guy, and I remember it was embarrassing because I was just blathering on without introducing myself. And when I finally stopped talking, when I had to catch my breath, he says, well, you know who I am. Who are you? And it was really one of those stupid moments, right? And then somewhere in the conversation, I swear to you, Ruben, I cannot make this up. I just stopped mid talk and I just said, can I just hug you? And he said, sure. And I gave him a nice hug. And then his wife was there. She goes by the name Red. And he said, Red's a hugger too. And I'm like, oh my God, you're going to let me hug your wife too? So you know how they say you should never meet your idols? No, you want to meet your idols in this case. He was a beautiful man, generous with his time. And so, he was my speaking role model, in terms of storytelling. When he tells a story, it's like, man, where's this thing going?
Oh yeah.
And there's so much beautiful drama in his voice and his body language. And if you study it, it's just art on stage.
Mm.
So that was my big, that to me was the guy that stood out the most.
Yeah.
Everybody else is, Les Brown. Just, I've heard his story so many times. I could probably tell you half of it already. But then I remember going 2 years ago, we shared the stage again. And I said, let me go to the front of the stage, because I was in the back with him. Go to the front of the stage. And there I am listening to this guy, Ruben, again, knowing what he's going to say. But the power in that voice and the delivery, the passion, I don't know what it is. It's just beautiful magic, man. So it is, I'm not intimidated. I've gotten over that. I'm too old for that, man. But I'm always in awe of what they can do and how they do it.
That's so well said. I have to ask this question though. Mm-hmm. This idea of the motivational speaker, it comes in different perspectives. Okay. People see it differently. Okay. There are a couple of camps, right? So camp number one might be full believers, people that really lean into that idea where they go to a conference, they watch a video, they feel inspired, they feel motivated, they feel like they can take on the world. There's massive amounts of endorphins and dopamines and just chemicals and emotions that they're feeling that allow them to just do what they want to do, or at least feel like they can do what they want to do. And then there's some other folks where they say, you know what? I don't need a messiah. I don't need someone to guide me. What is Tony Robbins' new like theme for his show? I forgot what it is, but it's a little
I'm not your guru was his documentary.
I'm not your guru. Thank you. I'm not your guru. Yeah.
By the way, great documentary.
Okay, that's awesome. I have not seen it yet. I do want to check it out. Right. But there's I've never been to an event.
I've never been to an event. I was, and I'm saying this live. I've never been a Tony Robbins fan, right? And then, I mean, I looked at the book. I go, yeah. Because a lot of the stuff was based on cybernetics, Maxwell Maltz stuff, right? So he just kind of put the nice spin on it. He was the first person to really put it online. By online, I mean TV at the time, right? And really created this infomercial business for speaking, or for personal power, awakening the giant within. And I was like, this sounds like another. What do you call those people that go through a Western town, selling snake oil, right? Just some snake oil stuff, right? And then, so I never really got into him. And then I remember he did a TED Talk. And I remember the TED Talk specifically, I remember Al Gore, the vice president, was in the audience. And for the first time, I heard Tony Robbins, not through a book, not through the carefully curated, audio of a cassette or a CD, but I heard him live, right? And I was like, whoa, where'd that guy come from? And that's when I was like, okay, this guy I can listen to. So when I watched the I'm Not Your Guru, I really did appreciate what he did, and I really like his stuff. To me, that movie elevated him even more. I mean, hearing him live at TED Talk was great. I was like, okay, this guy I can listen to, because it was more real. It was to your point, Ruben. He was talking about, look, I could sit here and go, you can do it, and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, you got to put in the work, man. And he was talking to people, like really talking to people. You know what I mean? And so that's when I said, okay, this Tony Robbins I had not seen. So this one I like. I like this Tony Robbins.
Well, he's evolved. He's evolved like crazy. It's nuts.
Man.
I mean, I just recently, actually, he posted one of his videos from 90s, and you can tell because his hair is all different. It's all like combed to the side and stuff. But it was interesting because the passion, the rhetoric, the kind of emotions that he had when he was communicating were very similar, but the content was obviously very different. Now he's really adapted. And I think then he leaned into this idea of let me be your guide. And now it's almost like we have to be our own guides. And that's really my question for you is, how much of motivation, how much ambition comes from self-love, believing in ourselves, and how much do we need to have a motivational speaker, someone to really catalyze or trigger us? What is the healthy combination where I'm not, because I know people, and I've heard of people that they go to shows like this, they just tour. They'll go to like 5 a year and they're not actually doing anything. It's truly the definition of a wantrepreneur.
Yeah. I think
whereas other people, like maybe me or you, we go to something like this, we get heavily inspired, heavily motivated, learn things, and then go execute. And to your point, I mean, you're writing books, you're building great businesses. So how do we solve this problem? How do we maintain balance here?
I think I like the word you just inserted very briefly, catalyzer, right? In the movie The Motivator, I talk about, any speaker that takes credit for somebody else's success is being disingenuous.
And let me cut you off. Motivator. What is this?
So if you go on YouTube, it's titled, just put Victor Antonio, The Motivator. That's the name of the movie, the documentary. And so in that documentary that's on YouTube, there's this part where I talk about that we're there to give people a nudge, a bump, or catalyze some type of thought. And in that movie, this guy comes up to me, unscripted. You can just see my face is kind of shocked, actually. He said, I heard you a year ago. And that just kind of spurred me to kind of start my own business. And I want to let you know that I started my business. He handed me his business card, and this is what I'm doing. Now, I'm not taking credit for that. I was just one nudge along this long path that he had been taking. And I think it's disingenuous to take credit for that. So I think people, I like listening to good speakers that have great content. I don't like listening to speakers who give me like benevolent bromides or tell me cute stories that I already know.
Yes.
I like insightful motivation. Like, one of my favorite speakers right now is Simon Sinek. And he wrote a book called, everybody knows Start With Why, but he just wrote a book called The Infinite Game. And I don't know if you've seen the video on TED Talk. He's just amazing. The guy's an amazing speaker because he doesn't move, but he still delivers with power. And he's a guy that, again, you could almost call it motivation, but what he's doing is he's giving you insight that makes you see things in a certain way that you go, oh, maybe I'm looking at this wrong. Maybe, you know what I mean? That is the catalyst part you kind of mentioned real quickly. Something that catalyzes an idea that just kind of triggers something and goes, oh, and that leads to a sequence of events that maybe you'll begin to execute on something specific.
And what is it? What's his superpower? What's Simon's superpower?
Simon, I think it's storytelling and then embedding insight into a story that you thought was so average, but yet when he tells it, he says, no, 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 look closer at this story. You know what I mean? And he says, look closer at the story and you'll see that there's some great value and some thought processes that went into this. The latest story he tells, for example, he said he went to a Microsoft event, and I'm going to screw this up, but I'll do my best. And he went to an Apple event to speak, right? When he went to the Microsoft event, they spend 100% of their time talking about how they're going to beat Apple. He goes to an Apple event, they spend 100% of their time how they're going to serve the customer.
Yes.
Something like that. And then he recounts the story where he was at the time where the Zune was out. Almost like, remember the Zune, the Microsoft iPod?
Yeah, I owned one.
Okay. Well, he was talking about how he was riding to the airport somewhere with one of the execs from Apple. And he says something like, look at this thing that they gave me. It's beautiful. It's better than anything you have. And the Apple guy just responded with, I have no doubt. Basically saying, yeah, I have no doubt. It's better today. Yeah. But we're playing the infinite game. I don't know if they'll still be there tomorrow. And see, it's taking a simple story like that and then giving you a piece of insight that you may be winning today, but that's just today. So, I have no doubt yours is better today. I have no doubt your video production is better today. That's just today.
Right.
What a different mindset, right? What a different mind. You're like, whoa. So I think that's his superpower. He can do some storytelling and reveal some insights that most people would just gloss over and not see.
So the common theme here is storytelling.
Big time.
All these titans, all these greats, Les Brown, Zig Ziglar, Tony Robbins, Simon Sinek, Victor. I mean, the common thread here is the ability to storytell. I mean, that's most of what we're doing when we communicate. I read some statistic where it's like 80 or 90% of our basic communication is just telling stories. Yeah. And if you're telling me that we need to become better storytellers to become better speakers or motivators or business people or just human beings, how can we practice that craft?
I used to record myself a lot somewhere online, and I'll tell people so they can find it. I can see my first actual Toastmaster presentation.
Ooh,
I had hair back then, so look carefully because it is me.
There and then.
Yeah, there and then. And I was really bad at it at the beginning. A lot of ums and ahs, and I didn't know. Sometimes we ramble a lot.
Yes.
And so, one of the things that you learn about storytelling is, again, as I mentioned earlier, to be very concise. And so people say, well, how do I practice this? How do I do it? So I'm an index card guy.
Okay.
And so when I'm reading a book, for example, like I can take a book, read it, and just go through it. I just finished reading Jonah Berger's book. It's going to come out called The Catalyst, which is why that word's right there, top of mind, comes out in March. And as I'm reading the book, I have a stack of index cards. And so every time there's a concept or an idea, I write the concept or idea and the page number on my index card, and then just try to add like 2 or 3 points to it. And then when I want to create a video like this, like if you go to my YouTube channel, Sales Influence, I create videos with an index card and I learn to tell the story. So I look at the data and I look at the context and I go, how do I explain this to somebody so they get it? Some guy gave me a word this week. He says simplexity, Victor. It's all about simplexity, which is taking concepts that are complex and breaking it down to its most simplest form. And I love that phrase because I think it's one of those things that we have to do. The best salespeople, the best communicators can take the most complicated concept and break it down so that anybody can understand it. And this I learned a long time ago. Anybody can make it sound complicated. That's the easy part. Break down a complicated subject and make it sound easy. That's an art form. And so practice is the only way of doing it. Getting in front of a video camera is not easy. You get all self-conscious. You're like, oh, did I say it right? Did I stutter? Oh, look at I don't know. I need more makeup, whatever it may be. But at the end of the day, this is what I've come to realize. It's not so much as you pointed out, the video production. You want decent video production, of course, right? You don't want to be in the dark, but it's the content, man. It's good content that you can communicate. And so, we were talking earlier about video in the sales process. again, any way you can use something to connect with somebody so they can see you. There's something about seeing somebody live. Like when I saw you, I saw a couple of your videos. You're walking down the street talking, right? I was like, I don't know why, but it captures you. You're like, oh, what's in the background? Where is he at? And so I think these are little fascinating things that the more visual we can make things for people, whether it's video, whether it's storytelling, I think the more connection we'll have with people.
Well, what I find really interesting is that a lot of kind of old school business folks say, business videos shouldn't be so entertaining. I don't think that they say it that overtly, but you shouldn't have too much fun in your business videos. I've heard that before. You should be a little bit more professional in your business videos. And that means maybe don't do the walk and talk, or maybe don't do something that's casual or kind of improv. Have it be a little bit more scripted. Be in front of, in a studio, with editing, with post-production, with a backdrop, green screen, something like that. And I realized that whenever I hear that advice, it's the exact opposite advice that I want to hear in my life and that I need to hear in my life. Because my best content is like your best content, where it's unscripted and I speak off the cuff and I'm just speaking from the heart. Your story about maybe your most successful or one of your most successful videos getting over 1 million views, where you didn't script it and you just jumped into your studio. I mean, that speaks scores about this.
Yeah.
A lot of people get stuck in that. And the reason why this is so relevant for me to hear and for other people to hear is because Dubb, as a platform, the technology of Dubb, whether it's the integration of Gmail or the integration of LinkedIn or the ability to use the Dubb mobile app to create real-time clips, it doesn't matter what tech you're using from Dubb. It is that idea of just getting your story out, being able to have confidence and tell your story. And that once you can do that, then the connections are made.
Yeah, I think, I understand the old school people. I really do. You know what I mean? Because I consider myself still 1 foot in old school. And so my kids drag me along to new school, right? Hang out with the millennials for a while type of thing. And I realized that you have to, if you're old school, I've seen too many get stuck back there. You know what I mean? Everything's changing. I mean, I think one of the most overt changes, obviously, is, even dress in business. How we dress has changed, right? It's more casual sometimes. Somebody wearing a suit with a tie is kind of like, whoa, there's an oddity. And even the the style of suits we wear, right? Whether it's tapered or not, so forth and so on. All this transmits whether you're in or out, so to speak.
Right.
And I think those who refuse
sorry
to
to
accept
interject here. Sorry to interject, but you mentioned the suits, and I have to bring this up. But the thing that's going on in the internet right now is it's a no bra movement, and that's sort of a response to I think a lot of things. I don't know if you've seen these clips yet.
Have not.
But you got to Google this. It's crazy. I keep seeing these clips come up where women are saying, you know what, we're empowered. We don't need a bra, and they take off their bra either before they go on video or during. And that's what some of these really interesting clips are. And it's like it's such a testament to your point, where people are maintaining and living their own version of what being casual means. Gone are the ties, gone are the whatever else.
Being able to do that, regardless of gender, I mean, whatever you're comfortable with, whatever, I always say, but whatever's not distracting. And I mean that for both sides. Like if a guy walks in and just has a tank top on, that's just not going to work. You know what I mean? And he's got his armpit hair hanging all over. It's just not a good look. Right. And so but I've noticed that it's very difficult, for a lot of the old school folks to come along and say, hey, things have changed. And I always tell myself, I don't want to be the old guy in the room going, that's not the way we used to do it. You don't want to be that guy. You don't want to be that guy. And so I think there's something to be said about being very aware of trends and even video trends. If you notice over the last few years, even like a lot of people don't want to, I got a whole green screen wall over here. Nobody wants to, you really use green screen anymore. It's almost like passe. It's kind of dating yourself. You want more of a studio look. So I had to change it to more of a studio look because I'm very aware of what people are seeing out there. So I think part of doing video, as you pointed out, is having your own content, doing it your way, but also being aware of what's palatable and not. Can I just use that? I think I like that word. What's palatable? Because again, I think some people just go too far, man, with the verbiage, with the videos and stuff like that. I think they're just trying to grab too much attention. I still go back. Content is king, man.
Okay, so let's get into that a little bit. Content is king. Content is queen, and then I should say, content is king. distribution is queen. Is that the saying? I forgot.
I have no idea. I
But
have no idea.
my question for you is, with respect to creating content, how do we figure out what content to create? Okay, what are our lines? What's our data? How do we develop that content calendar? Do we just kind of go off things off the dome, or do we kind of build a library while we live our lives and sort of respond to people and respond to questions that we might receive?
That's really a good question. I mean, I never really thought about it that way. I think, well, I don't think, I know I've approached mine this way. 2008, when I decided to do sales influence is all about finding the why and how people buy. That's my thing, right? I like neuroscience. I like psychology. I like decision-making theory. I like how people make choices. And if I can understand that, how they make decisions, then I can sell to them more effectively if I understand their choices and how they go about it. So all my videos fall under that big umbrella, right? It's all about selling. So I got sales and influence. So I defined my parameters. I want to talk about sales and influence. I don't talk about marketing. I don't talk about customer service. I really don't talk a lot about leadership or teamwork. My whole thing is sales and influence. How do you sell more? But how can you influence a buying situation? And so that has put some like guardrails around by the way, self-imposed guardrails on what I want to talk about. So I can become the domain expert in that. And that has allowed me to, you know how when you buy a new car for the first time, Ruben, and then the next day you notice that car on the street? That's kind of that selective perception. When you have selective perception for the content you want, you begin to see things. You begin to see angles that you've never seen before because you're so focused on that.
I call it the Ford Explorer syndrome, because when I bought a Ford Explorer, the day after, I started to see Ford Explorers everywhere.
There it is. There it is. And so when you know what you want to curate, what content you're looking for, you begin to see it. When you go to the bookshelf, when you go online, your brain's already looking for it.
So it's almost like you're priming your mind on a general topic, general category around your audience, and then you're sort of developing something in real time to be able to execute upon that.
Because I'm always asking myself, how could I, like, again, let's go back to maybe Jonah Berger's book, The Catalyst. There's a couple of things he wrote about. I go, you know what? I could put a spin on that, a twist on that would clarify this way, almost like give it a Simon Sinek type of scrubbing, where you give it a different look, a different view, and then you present and people go, huh, I never looked at that sales approach that way. I never looked at when somebody says, I'll think about it. I never thought I should say it that way or use this tone or change that. And then people go, oh, that's awesome. That's what attracts people, I think, to my channel.
And then talk to us about Jonah's book, The Catalyst. What's the kind of, without giving
Jonah
it away?
Berger, Wharton School of Business, I believe, out of Pennsylvania, or the Wharton School. And he's written several books. Contagious was the one before that. And I'd followed him already. I'd read a lot of his article. And then The Catalyst came out, and he actually reached out to me because, again, my podcast is getting pretty popular. So I'm getting a lot of requests to get on my podcast. And so when he reached out, I had to read the name twice. And at first I thought it was spam, because I'm like, it's not the Jonah Berger reaching out to me to talk about his new book. And The Catalyst is all about, it's not about pressuring. It's not about changing the dynamics of something. It's how do you take the brakes off of how people make a buying decision? In other words, people don't want to be pushed or pressured into a buying decision. That's pushing. A catalyst is somebody who can say, let me remove the obstacle, lower the barriers to action, reduce the friction, so you'll say yes, more likely than not. And that's what the book is all about. And so he has this, formula called the reduce formula. If I can remember, it's reactance, the endowment effect, and I forgot what the rest of it was, but it's all about decision-making, uncertainty, and providing compelling evidence and all this stuff to help people make an easier buying decision. And so when he approached me and I read the synopsis of the book, I go, that fits my audience. That's a perfect example of why I wanted to talk to him. I said, that book fits my audience. I can plug that in. And it was a no-brainer. So to me, again, when I think about creating my content, I already know what my framework is, who my audience is. Frontline business people, face-to-face, whether it's B2B or B2C, these are the people I'm targeting with my content.
We spoke about The Infinite Game. This is Simon Sinek's book. We spoke about customer centricity, understanding people's problems, people's pain points, maybe having empathy, compassion towards them. One of the things that I see a lot is that when people are communicating, specifically in sales, when they have some business objective, that it's a very me-centric rhetoric where
Sure.
I'd love to get onto a call. I'd love to take you through this demo. I'd love to do X, Y, and Z, where it's
Sure.
not necessarily putting the other person forward, and putting what their needs and their desires and their wants and challenges, trials, tribulations. How do you recommend that people reset their mind so that when they are communicating with people, that they put others first in a customer-centric fashion?
So in my sales training programs, I talk about the 3-step sales process, right? It's very simple. The first one is empathize with the customer, understand where they're at. The second piece is to educate them. And the third part is to empower them. The empathy piece is start out with, here's what you're going through right now, Mr. Customer. Here's some of the things that you're experiencing. Here's how it's impacting your market. Here's how it's increasing your cost. Here's where you're losing revenue. And at that point, if you do it correctly, if you empathize right up front, Ruben, then they're more likely to want to listen to your solution. They go, Victor understands me. This salesperson gets me. What I see a lot, I think what we're maybe referring to, is people who go in there and spend the first 5, 10, maybe even 15 minutes talking about us, right? Here's who we are. Here's what we're going to talk about. Here's the agenda. Here's our vision statement. Here's our mission statement. Look at this. We've been in business for 100 years. And then they show, a map with all the points of presence of where they got all their factories or whatever it may be. And then they talk about all the companies they work with. They always show you the logo slide. You've seen that, right? Where they got 100 logos on the screen. And they spend the first 5, 10, 15 minutes talking about themselves. Ruben, and the customer's going, what about me? You need to talk about me. What about me? You've just spent 15 minutes. The first 10 to 15 minutes are the most valuable. To me, that's the most valuable time frame to really get in there and let the customer know, ABC, always be connecting. I'm connecting. I get you, man. I understand your business. I understand you. I understand your market. I understand what you're going through. I understand Michael Porter's 5 forces that are impacting your business. I get you. Now that I get you, let me tell you why I'm here. And they go, okay, why are you here? Because you seem to understand our business very well. Totally different approach. But that requires you to become a domain expert.
And you actually take the time to understand their business.
That's it.
I had a vision when you were saying that, where instead of the first 5 slides being about our company, it be about their company.
Yeah, it's about them. It's about, here's your problem. If you look at the format of a hero story, you keep the hero story in mind. The hero story begins in almost like a V shape, right? I did a video on that. So if you type in Victor Antonio, the hero story, you'll find the video. But everything was normal, right? I always start with everything was normal.
Yes.
And then an event happened.
Yes.
What was that event? I don't know. Government regulations, new technology, disruptive technology, so forth and so on, right? And then you're talking to the customer. So look, last year you guys were doing great. That was normal. Then this event happened. Because of this event, 3 major things have now impacted your business. And you just do that at what they call that emotional drowning. You know what I mean? Where you stick their head underwater, so to speak, and make them feel the pain as they're gasping for air because they realize they're losing money. And then when you go through that emotional drowning, they're ready to now listen to your solution. And then that's when you pivot and show them how your solution will address these problems that they're currently having to arrive at a new normal on the other side.
And that's the end of the V.
That's correct.
That's the character arc. That's the hero's arc.
That's right. I always use the Independence Day. Remember the Independence Day? Everything was normal. Then there's an event. Will Smith walks out of his house and he sees a spaceship over Los Angeles. Not a good thing. That's the event. Then bad things begin to happen. The aliens start killing people, start bombing things, blowing up the White House, and now threatening all of mankind. Boom. The hero shows up. Him and Jeff Goldblum now have to present a solution, right? Insert a virus into their mainframe and, everything goes to hell in the handbasket. Everything blows up and everything goes back to normal again. So it's a constant hero arc. And that's a good framing for having a conversation with the customer because it focuses you on them. So look at my sales process again. Empathy, I understand you. That's the first part of the hero story. The education piece is where you present your solution and what you can do for them. And then the empower piece is when you say, based on what I've shown you, Is there any reason we shouldn't get started or at least do something about this? That's the empower piece. Let them, if you've done it right, you don't have to pressure them. You don't have to close them. You just have to present a proposal that makes sense.
You made a choice. You were a CEO, successful
Mhm.
CEO of a company. You obviously climbed the ranks prior to that as a successful salesperson. You had a monster pipeline. You drove hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue. You had that CEO. You did that. You did that thing. You did it for over a year. Now you made a choice in your life to move into being a personality, a speaker,
Yep.
an author.
Mhm.
What made you make that choice? What was your catalyst story for that?
I get that a lot. So everything's in the motivator, the movie online. It tells the whole story. By the way, that's somebody following me for 24 hours. And in 24 hours, I explain all these things, right? But to make a long story short, I had seen Zig Ziglar, and that was always right there in the back of my head. But I went into selling. And so I was doing wallet selling. And, it's hard to stop when things are going well. You're making a lot of money. When you come from a family that didn't have a lot of money, making money was pretty good, actually, right? And so when you have a family, kids are growing up, you need to make money. But as I tell in the documentary, there was this quiet discontent. It's hard to explain it, but I call it the quiet discontent. Sometimes says, man, you just don't want to be doing this anymore. And the money wasn't, everything, Ruben, after a while. I mean, when I walked away, I think I don't think I know my base salary was like 250,000, commissions on top of that, stock options, all that good stuff. I mean, stuff I'd never dreamed of, right? But I just wasn't happy. People say money can't buy you happiness. I'm just going to guarantee you that doesn't buy you happiness. But I always argue that money does buy you options. Let's keep that in mind, right?
Yeah.
So, because I don't discount people who like making money. I don't discount that at all. But for me, I just wanted to write books and be a speaker ever since I had that Zig Ziglar vision in my head. And it all started when I was working for a company in Minnesota, and they gave us these tickets called peak performance tickets, where every month a speaker would come. And every month I would go downtown Minneapolis to watch one of these speakers, a few of these speakers. And I remember watching a few of these going, that's what I want to do. You know what I mean? I go, that's what I want to do one day. So it sat there. I mean, think about it. From 93, when I saw Ziegler for the first time, to 2001, that's what, 8-year span right there, whatever it is. I can't do numbers in my head. Yeah, 8-year span when I finally just made the plunge. And it was scary, man. The motivator talks about how scary it was and how much money I didn't make the first year. I think the first year I made like $17,000. And I'm like, oh man, what did I do? What did I do? What did I do? And then the second year, I think I made like $54,000. Well, the trend was good though. And we kept going. But I mean, there were moments, and I confess this. There was a couple of times where I had to go back and get a corporate gig, right? Because my speaking career wasn't taking off as fast as I wanted. And I tell people that because, everybody likes to tell their hero story. Like, yep, I felt the passion, decided to go for it, and boom, it worked out. Well, I don't know. It's never really a straight line, Ruben. As you probably started business, right? You realize it's not a straight line. It gets real messy, curvy, and it takes a lot of determination, consistency, hanging in there, and just a little bit of faith to say, you know what, man, I'm on the right course. I don't know how I'm going to get there, but man, I know I'm on the right course. I just got to stick it out.
And what kept you pushing?
The fear of going back
Ah,
to a corporate job. I couldn't do it anymore. I'm like, I consider myself unemployable right now. By that, I mean, I can't work for a company. You know what I mean? I can't work for somebody else. I just couldn't do it anymore. I just couldn't do it. There's something about, the corporate politics, the stuff you put up with, just a lot of stuff within corporate America. Anybody listening to this knows what I'm talking about. You probably know what I'm talking about.
yeah.
And so for me, I think, the last, I don't know, I'll just say the last 5 years, I throw a number out there. My quality of life has been so high that it's almost embarrassing. Do you know what I mean? In a good way. And when I say quality of life, people immediately think, okay, this guy's just making bank, just super bank, bank, bank. Making money is good, but being able to enjoy your life and not feel that pressure, like actually enjoy moments, that balance. Dude, I've been in the zone for 5 years now, easy.
And what is that zone for you?
The zone is the, working just enough to get the things you want, but having enough time to do the things you want. You know what I mean? Waking up in the morning, You know, I've been married 32 years, so it's nice waking up in the morning, having a cup of coffee with my wife for an hour, just talking almost every morning, you know, and just chilling, talking about politics, talking about life, talking about the economy, talking about the kids, talking about everything, and you're not rushed. It's taking a midday nap when you feel like taking one, damn it. You know what I mean? It's like just doing
Preach.
what you want to do, not having to be there. The downside is the traveling that I have to do. But
Yes.
like when I'm traveling, I have to remind myself the price you have to pay to
Yes.
that other lifestyle. So
Right.
it's never, you know, total panacea, like, oh, it's perfect. No, there's
Right.
like, you know, anybody who's as a speaker has traveled, they know the lonely nights at the hotel, those long hours at the airport, flights are canceled,
Oh yeah.
you know, all that. So that's the downside. But, you know, if that's the bad, it got to take a little bit of bad to get some of the good. So I think that to me is the zone, you know, being able to write books, you know, and then being more accountable to yourself than to somebody else. And I think that there's a beautiful freedom in that, man. You know what I mean? There's a beautiful freedom in that.
So there's this idea of the definition of an entrepreneur,
Hmm.
which is by definition, of course, according to the French term, it's owning your risk. You know, it's the
Mm.
ability to manage and own your risk. And
I didn't know that. I didn't know that.
yeah, I think that definition has changed 100 times now. But what's really interesting
I like that.
is I like your idea of a self accountability. I really connect to that because
Yeah.
accountability really comes down to the actions that we take, the repercussions that we deal with, the rewards that we win. All of these come from our choices and the work that we put in, and frankly, the connections that we build.
Yep.
Now, what I want to know is how and why do people get stuck into this idea of being the wannapreneur instead of the entrepreneur to say, you know what, I am going to take that leap of faith. I
Mm.
am going to go be okay with making $17,000 my first year and then 54 the following to be on a trajectory to finally get the success that I know that I'm capable of doing and making ends meet and landing gigs and doing what you have to do. But how
Mm.
can people really, I guess my question is this, how can people find it within themselves to maintain that idea of self-belief so that they can carry on?
Man, that's a mouthful, Ruben. That's a mouthful.
Bring it.
Because it's really tough, right? I mean, again, I could give you the motivational slash inspirational answer to that. Find your
And
passion.
I
Your
want that.
passion will
I
drive you
want
to
all of it. Yeah.
yeah, and all that stuff. But I think what happens is that in a weird way, I can only give you my, I always like that thing about that example about four people see an accident, four people see four different things. So when I give advice, I always like to pre-qualify it like I am 1 degree on a 360 circle, right? So everybody, there's 359 other opinions somewhere else. My opinion is this, is that I've been driven by fear. I've been driven by fear most of my life. When we were poor, the fear of staying poor was not cool. When I got into corporate America and I realized I didn't like it, the fear of being stuck was like too much. It was too much. It was unpalpable, right? And then today, the fear of having to go back just drives me to go forward. I mean, I, like you and many others, have to struggle. I won't say every day, but many days, just trying to motivate myself to get stuff done, be self-accountable, grab myself by the back of the neck, so to speak, and just say, come on, Victor, we got to do something today. But push comes to shove, all you got to do is say, well, would you rather go back? And I'd be like, okay, I'm motivated. Boom. So I've always been motivated by fear, man. I just, you know what I mean? I don't want to do that, man. So I'm going to do this. Like, the thing is, it's kind of that, burn your boats mentality, right? When you burn the boats, man, you burn the boats. It's like you just got to go that way. There's no, it's like some Hernan Cortez stuff. You got to go forward. There's no going back. We just burned the boats. We got to go conquer, that part of Mexico, so to speak. And I think that whole mentality that you don't want to go back. So I always tell, what's that phrase? It isn't until the pain of the same is greater than the pain of change that people will change. So when the pain of the same is so great and greater than the pain of change, that's when people say, you know what, I'm doing something. And then when you're in it, when you become that wannapreneur, I want to do this. Once you're in it, you just have to remind yourself, what's the alternative, man? What's the alternative?
Right.
That's a burn the boat mentality. If I got to go back, we know what's down that road. I don't want to do that anymore. And again, I'm not saying that working for a company is bad. I'm not saying that. Just for me, it didn't work out. I have friends, love working within organizations, love working with teams. That's their thing, man. It's just not my thing.
Well, listen, man, I'm a fan, I'm a believer, I'm a follower. I really, really appreciate this insight. I think a lot of people need to hear this. And there's just some really simple things that you said that allowed me, and I think others, to really understand why they're being held back.
Yeah. I think if I could share this last story, I remember, it's not a story, it's a study that was done by Dr. Martin Seligman at the University of Pennsylvania. And he did this study, and I'll make it short, but basically he found out that, when certain dogs were given shocks, and that shock you get when you touch a doorknob, so no animals are hurt during the experiment. He found out that dogs that, some dogs had a button in front of them and they can tap with their nose and it would make the shocking stop. Other dogs didn't have that button and they were just periodically shocked, right? Second phase of the experiment, they were placed in a 2-compartment box, and one side was, the actual floor of it was, you can actually get shocked. The dogs that had the buttons actually jumped over the barrier to the other side. The dogs that didn't have the button in the first phase just laid there and whimpered. Seligman concluded something very interesting, is that when we feel like we have no control over our environment, we feel defeated. And then I think he put the nail, you hit the nail on the head when he said, it's how we explain events to ourselves that determine whether you're an optimist or pessimist. For example, if something doesn't go your way, a business didn't go right, you didn't close something, pessimists say, I'm an idiot. Man, no matter what I try, it never works out for me. That's why I suck at sales. The optimist will go, oh, dang, I thought I had that. Well, we got to try something different. We got to figure out how this is going to work because, I should have got that deal. And it's that, he called it the self-explicatory style. It's how we explain things to ourselves that will determine whether you're an optimist or a pessimist. I'm not doing the book any justice, but go check it out. The book is called Learned Optimism.
So I want to understand what you're saying. So what you're saying is that I have heard of this book before, and I've heard very good things about it. So this idea of explaining something to yourself to understand why something happened, why you lost a deal, why there was a failure, that helps your projection factor and your future success.
Correct. He gave it 3 dimensions. It was permanent, pervasive, and I remember the other one. Personal, permanent, pervasive. So he said personal was like, I'm an idiot. You take personal. I'm just not smart. Permanent, I'll never, you've heard that language, right? I'll never learn how to do that. I could never do that. Pervasive is, no matter what I try, I can try this, I can try that. I can go there or here. It doesn't matter. It never works out for me. And that's how they talk to themselves. And, we hear a lot about, awareness, how you think about how you think. And I think that's something that needs to be studied a little further, because I think when you start listening to yourself, it's kind of scary, the stuff that you say to yourself. Most people are just not kind to themselves.
So we have a quote here from Stephen. It's just a little comment here, since this is a live video. It's kind of lengthy here, so you might just take a minute if you have a moment just to read this. I wanted to, if you're okay with that, I wanted to just kind of present another idea while you're doing that. This idea of storytelling is really, really important to Dubb and what we're about. We always tell people your best videos are done when you simply hit that record button and when you share your authentic self. Those are the best ones. There's all sorts of technology, there's video editing, there's all sorts of stuff out there that's going to allow you to put bells and whistles on the content that you put out there. But the only way to truly get data and to get feedback from people is to start. So if this is a sign, if you've needed that sign, please let this sign, mostly catalyzed from Victor and his great kind of learnings about being authentic and being confident and just getting started. But we encourage you guys just to get it going. So what is your take on this quote? Right
I mean, you can tell Stephen's put some work into this. I mean, you put some thought into this, man. I really appreciate it. You also seem to be pushing pain over the profit motivation. Do you think that would be better? The thing is, I think we don't live, Stephen. Okay, so the self-actualization piece is, Maslow's hierarchy, right? The top level is that, and everybody has to define what that really means for them. I think too often, like I tell you that, for me, fear of not doing something is more motivating than putting a lot of money in front of me. But I went through a transition, Stephen. When we were poor, money was the motivating factor. And one could say that I needed money to alleviate the fear that I was feeling. So I'm not trying to kind of create this, Gordian knot of confusion here, but I think it's, we're all motivated by something different. We're just like this bag of chemicals, man, that everybody reacts differently to something. And so I would turn it back on you and said, how would you define it? Is fear more motivating for you, or is it profit? For me, I think profit now, having made some money, it's a motivator, but I also I've come to realize, because I'm maybe a little older than you, Stephen, it's just that, man, it isn't all about the money. You got to have some time to enjoy this thing. I always say, if, I'm hoping there's an afterlife, right? I just want the afterlife, right? But just in case there isn't an afterlife, I think I'm going to take advantage of what's going on here now. It's kind of what I tell myself. And so too often we get, my wife and I always joke about how we're all caught in the matrix, trying to impress people. I drive, let me show you how I'm not in the matrix. And the reason I keep my car, I have a Volvo that's 20 years old. It's got 200,000 plus miles on it. And it's a reminder that I don't want to be in the matrix. You know what I mean? I don't want that. I don't need the Instagram. Oh, check me out. I don't need all that. So I've gotten to a point in my life where I don't need any, validation from anybody. And that helped me, by the way, Stephen. When one day I said to myself, I'm not going to wait for people to validate me. I'm just going to validate myself. I literally said that to myself. I'm just going to validate myself. I'm awesome. You know what I mean? And that's all I needed. And so I think when it comes to self-actualization, for all I know, you may be there already. But I would also argue it'd be an interesting philosophical conversation, Stephen, that how long can you stay there and how do you maintain that space? That'd be another interview with Ruben, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, pain, this idea of pain and, overcoming trial and tribulation, the quote unquote old school mentality is that life is tough and life is struggle and it's very challenging. And that's just how it is, period, full stop.
Yep.
There's no way to overcome that. But I think, through a lot of work and a lot of meditation, a lot of introspection and just resources and time, we've realized that that's actually not necessarily the case. We can overcome that challenge and we can actually enjoy ourselves. There's a lot of repercussions to this mentality where people are kind of leaning too much into it. They're showing off happiness. I was just looking at this documentary, the Fire documentary, where it was the whole thing was just built on opulence, and showing.
I saw it, by the way. I saw it.
Yeah.
Hey, by the way, Ruben, I'll have a 5-minute hard break here because I jump on another live call. Sorry about that, man.
Yeah, cool. Let's wrap this right now, but appreciate that. So, I think that it is the time now to just empower ourselves and to really get what we deserve, which is contentment.
Yeah, I think there was a statement, and I'm just going to misquote it, but it talks about that the problem is that you have too many needs. You just reduce your wants or something like that. You know what I mean? If you reduce your wants, it's just as powerful as trying to gain something. And again, I know I bastardized that whole quote, but it's a beautiful quote because it's not about, too often people have too many wants. All I have to do is reduce the wants and live in a place where you're comfortable. Our biggest enemy, and I would close off on this, our biggest enemy, Ruben, is comparing ourselves to other people all the time. That is the biggest enemy we have. We'll never be happy, and we'll never be able to stop doing that, but it's being aware that you're doing that, and that's what's driving your unhappiness. When you compare yourself to other people, that really stirs it just gets under your skin, and I think that impacts people a lot mentally.
Love that, man. Such good insight. Victor, where do we find you on social, LinkedIn, YouTube?
VictorAntonio.com, or just type in Victor Antonio. You will find me. How's that?
Nice. All right, man. Muchas gracias por su tiempo.
All right, Ruben. Muchísimas gracias a usted, señor. Un caballero.
Gracias.
Adiós.